take a slower route and be absolutely fine. Probably better, right, than, as you said, passing your turn 4. So I think that's something to keep an eye out in these games and from these players. But let's just dive right in. So Frenetic on the top on that Paladin and that Felkeine on this Mage.
Straight away, none of the seriously juicy cards in hand for Felkeine. He does have turn 1 Font of Power. You know, arguably, this used to be a throw in the older version of the deck because you had those 3 super power spikes to look for. Now, with Lunacy not being so much a guaranteed win card in your opening hand, it's more arguable about whether you want to just keep Font of Power and play it on 1, especially when you quite like the ability to just contest board with some 2/3s or whatever else against a board-based deck like Aggro Paladin on the other side. So this is a pretty good keep, I think, for Felkeine, but crucially, he rolls straight into that Devolving Missiles as well, which I think is card number 1 you are looking for in this sort of matchup.
Yeah, when I was doing the key card Sol, I nearly just put Devolving Missiles 3 times because it feels that good in this meta. Not even in just this matchup, not even just versus Paladin, but just in general. The card feels insane. Yeah, though, Frenetic got a pretty good outcome here with this Spy Mistress. Very aggressive, obviously susceptible to a ping. But you could couple it with some backup afterwards with the Crab Rider, but yeah, he's going to go for it here. I think he was just thinking about a 1/3, but that doesn't have more attack.
Oh, great observation. Can't argue with that logic.
I mean, that's the way you've got to play this Paladin, in my opinion. I think it is just maximum damage every turn. Are you a fan of Crab Rider here, or do you think Avenge Glacier is actually potentially a bigger payoff?
It's awkward, right? Like, I think the real good upside of the Avenge play is that you really want to attack with your 3/1 because, like you said, you want to start dealing damage, but obviously you expose that to just ping from Mage, nothing else. So I think by playing a minion with pretty healthy stats, like 3 health for the Avenge to be dropped on, you kind of disincentivize just pinging the 3/1 here, right? So essentially, by playing the Secret, Frenetic has been able to cash out his 3/1 for damage twice, which is kind of insane in this spot.
And also the fact that the Secret, right, is like, well, the Secret might not be Avenge, it could be Yogg. And then it messes with the potential removal too. It's very, very, very good. Frenetic looks like he's just going to go the Crab Rider. And this is where these aggro styles get really tough, because a part of me wondered, like, do you just lock in this Conviction, like, first, and then go for it?
Wow. Yeah, I was extremely tempted to, like, Conviction first there and then drop the Crab Rider and take the value trade with the Crab Rider, because, again, even if it lands on the 3/1 and it's just an easy ping target or whatever else, you still have that Avenge popping, right? I think the worry there a little bit is, like, ping into proc Avenge into Devolving Missiles, which then eats so much value if you've used your Conviction as well. It's certainly a difficult turn if you do want to play around all the Mage outs, but generally good philosophy playing an aggro deck is not to play around everything, just play around particularly game-losing things, and I think perhaps that was a little bit too all-in to be met with the Devolving Missiles on the other side.
Looking forward to seeing what this Golem was, because my instincts say 5 mana stealth of some kind.
It is stealth summon copy. It is the
wow, that is
one,
perfect.
The aggro deck. Yep.
Perfect, because then he can freely, well, most of the time, freely Conviction on, and you've just pushed an absolute insane amount of damage.
Yep. Great combination with Conviction. I know neither of us really came across as big Kazakus fans last week, if people were paying attention to the broadcast, but extremely different situation in this version of the deck, where it does just do exactly what you want it to do in a lot of spots.
It's not terrible. It's not terrible.
Gold Road Grunt.
Yes.
The nuts.
Yeah, the frenzy effect on this, if you've not seen it, is you gain armor based on the damage you took. And I guess at least Frenetic can just poke it for 1. And that's just 1 armor. So when I said it's not terrible, that was my reasoning. He can do that and still just play the Golem if he wants to. But he looks like he might be going for something else. But this has to be Golem, right?
Yeah, I think it has to be Golem, yeah. But, you know, even, sure, the Frenzy is going to do not much here. It's a nice little bonus, but the reaction to that is just 3/7 Taunt.
Oh, it's still very good, yeah.
It could have no text on it in that scenario. It'd still be a fantastic outcome from the Apexis Blast.
We have been talking a lot about Frenetic's turns, of course, because they're, I guess, the most active. But Felkeine is getting into a position with that taunt that he can start, like, maybe even making a push for the board. I'd really like to see if he can get this the occult on board soon. Because once you start to outnumber the minions on the board against this Paladin, you probably just win.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, new favourite card, by the way, in that Discover. Egwin.
Okay, fair enough.
Not for this matchup, but it's very, very powerful.
It is a very strong card, yeah. It's hard. It's very strange. I think I said this to you when we were practicing earlier in the week. It's like, I had to reprocess how good a card that actually is. Now people are actually playing minions in their Mage deck because you just never had to associate how powerful an endless chain of spell damage actually is, because you only saw it in Spell Mage, where it just never landed on anything else unless it was a prime.
Generally with those builds, the minions are very cheap. So you get to just go, oh, 1 mana plus 2 spell damage plus something else. Seems good.
This other secret is Oasis Ally, as you would have expected. Obviously, with the taunt in play, he is very eager to pick up Oasis Ally off the ring toss there, and has done.
We'll get the, I would say, bad news, but again, you could argue that, well, it's not Ice Barrier, and is that good?
I must move quickly.
I think this is just a straight-up face plan now, isn't it? If you're Frenetic, you just got to try and push some damage, draw some cards, and just hope that you pick up, like, Hammer for like 9 extra damage to try and push over the line, something like that. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's it. The Hammer of the Arrow is actually really important because it's the 9 damage plus just a 6/6 on the board. Again, like I said earlier, at the moment it feels like most classes don't really deal with big minions so well, and the fact that you get to swing to either gain more tempo and remove an enemy minion or just push it to face means that there's just kind of it's like a double whammy of a problem, right, for the opponent.
Yep. Yeah, it's just so much damage. I noticed, like, very early on when people were talking about, Watch Post getting nerfed, and I was pointing out that, like, well, is this like a feel thing? Do you just not like the way, like, do you just not like playing against them? Because they're not that strong in terms of win rate. And I was looking up cards that had a better mulligan win rate than Posts, and Hammer of the Naru, even back then, before Aggro Paladin was the played deck, had a better mulligan win rate than Watch Posts. It's like, is that not the most bizarre thing you've ever heard?
It is strange, yeah. It's not something I would have ever guessed, if I'm being completely honest. Like,
Just to show what an obnoxiously powerful card it is. It's just so much stuff in one card.
Second Brain Freeze, big deal there, and this is where Felkeine can turn the corner. So, Crossroads Gossiper is a card I like the idea of, and it feels powerful. But the problem with it in this list I found was the list doesn't play Noble Sacrifice, and I think you almost have to with Gossiper, because a lot of the time you do this play and then they just kill the Gossiper first. And then you're like, like, never mind, it's a 4/3 that does nothing. It's a 4/3 with taunt to an extent, right? So it's just like, well, they kill it first. Whereas if Noble Sacrifice was there, the board kills on it would actually then obviously buff it, and then it starts stacking and looking very good. But Frenetic does not play Noble Sacrifice.
It's certainly, in essence, a win more card, right? Because the idea being, you're the quicker deck, you're the more efficient deck, so you get ahead on board. So they don't have minions where they can just, like, bump into your 4/3, right? They have to cast spells, and that procs Oh My Yogg, or they have to, like, kill another minion first, and that procs Avenge, or whatever else. And that's not necessarily bad. Like, I think the phrase win more has a bad reputation. Like, if you do literally just win more by having the card in your deck.
I like winning, and I like more.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Like, you can also just describe that as, like, snowballing, right? Like, you take a strong position and you make it stronger. Like, sometimes that is correct, but I'm kind of with you in that I have found it to be a very, like, awkward top deck in a lot of spots as well, when you just don't really have any secret synergy. It's certainly not a card I'm 100% convinced about in the deck.
This is where things are starting to slip here for Frenetic. He is just going to commit the conviction, because he's getting to the point where he might not have the board to actually use it anyway. He's playing off the top of his deck. He needs something pretty big here to be able to even threaten Felkeine at this point. Or he needs the spell to be very good for him.
Frenetic's still here. He's decided he still quite likes playing Hearthstone. Thank you very much. Fair enough.
I really like the look of Apex's Blast here.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's just another minion that might be a massive taunt.
Yeah.
Close.
All right. Yeah, we take those. For those of you who haven't seen it, that is not just a 1/1. That has a 5/8 taunt inside its Death Rattle, so that is another enormous minion coming off of Apex's Blast.
Reporting for duty.
All right, is it counter lethal time? Should we just giddy up? Fireball face.
It could be. You could just trade this away and it's almost a win anyway, though. You just remove the board if you really want to here. Oh,
yeah.
Remove the board now.
Oh, imagine pointing spells at minions. Come on. What is this?
Look, if you've got to bump the 1/1, then you may as well kill all the minions, okay?
It's not about just winning the game, it's about mentally destroying your opponent for the rest of the series.
About winning more.
Exactly, yeah.
And this is the problem the Paladin will fall into here. Without, what, exactly second hammer at the Naru now, there's just nothing on its own that actually competes with anything that Felkeine can do. Like 3 Mask of Cthulhu. How many masks does this guy need?
I'm fairly sure from my history in Vegas that rolling 3 7s in a row is a good thing.
I'm just trying to work out what these different masks are. How many balls does this guy go to? Frenetic going to take the loss there. Felkeine taking it, and already, you know, I think you can see it. Just like Felkeine almost feeling the pressure right now, and it's true of both of these players. Like they need to win. They need to get out of this group and make it to at least top 8 to be able to try and bank a good amount of points. Because, like, if not, even though there's going to be 7 weeks of competition, if you're 0 points after 2 of those weeks, you almost have to like flawless victory the rest and keep hitting those top 8. So it's really, really tough for both these players here. But good win there for Felkeine, just about holding out and putting stop to some of the pressure that Frenetic was putting on.
Yeah, and it didn't look that winnable for Frenetic. I think if there was any window, it was perhaps going a little bit more aggressive early with the conviction, like we talked about early on, but that would have ended up getting punished by the devolving missiles anyway. Then this was the other turn that I was curious about, because him taking down the 3/2 there with the Crab Rider and the sword, he had the opportunity to use Hand of Adal and like push even more face damage straight away, and then potentially set up like a hammer out by dealing extra face damage straight up. I think he ended up using that Hammer of Adal on a frozen minion and not even getting any damage out of it, which could have cost him, but I think with the way his deck panned out, he never drew that big payoff Ender card anyway, so I don't think it would have mattered too much, but I think there were maybe a window or two in there for him to just flip the switch and be a little bit more aggressive, but tough to say overall. But first game of the day goes to Felkeine, and as Raven keeps mentioning, really crucial series for both of these players, because this will really set the tone for the rest of the season, I imagine.
Yeah, and here's Felkeine's next deck. He's going to be that token druid here. Not my favourite archetype I've ever played, I'll throw it that out there and be pretty honest, but one that even more players have jumped on this week, as well as, you know, not really in, we didn't really see it in Europe much last week, but in the other regions there was a lot of token druid. What do you think has made that change? What's caused that shift?
I think, so there's a lot of factors. One, it's a deck that didn't get touched in the patch, which some people thought was playable before, right? So again, when you're in the European region, you're scrambling for decks to submit. A deck that was tier 2, tier 3 to begin with and didn't get touched by the nerfs is going to seem pretty reasonable thing to submit. Secondly, when it comes down to like maybe setting up some kind of target control lineup, I think Token Druid does great work against Warlock, for example, just, you know, because you can throw down huge boards over and over again. And actually their mass AoE is quite limited. It does seem like they have mass removal for everything, but it's really just a couple of School Spirits, and then even like double corrupted Cascading Disaster doesn't really mess with most of Token Druid's boards, and it's not till they get to Twisting Nether that they really have another full board sweep come into play, and by the time they get to Twisting Nether, you've got Soul of the Forest on your minions, almost certainly, so that usually lines up pretty well. Or the game has ended and you've won, yeah. So I think the Druid does line up pretty well in this matchup, but I am with you, Raven, and unlike you, I'm not going to hedge the statement in any way. I despise this deck, and it's probably my least favourite archetype to ever play in Hearthstone history. I do think it wins enough to be a justifiable bring. I just personally do not enjoy the deck whatsoever.
I think one of the stronger points, as well as obviously what you pointed out, is in the aggro matchups, you can dominate those as well, with the correct hand, of course.
Yeah.
But a lot of aggro decks can't beat wide boards, right? We kind of just saw that if you lose your board, you lose the game. We are going to see how it goes up against this Paladin, and I think unless Frenetic really goes nuts here in this first couple of turns, he will just fall behind, because Felkeine, as long as he lives long enough to get a wide board once, he can just probably efficiently just take apart Frenetic's board and then never get it back again.
Also, final note for now on things that tilt me about Token Druid, and I do very much mean for now. It's definitely going to come up later again. But Felkeine
We're going to be having to talk again.
Felkeine also demonstrating that he's a sociopath, because there is a way to build Token Druid, which is just 15 2-ofs, and it all fits on the left-hand side of a graphic, and Felkeine chose not to do that for some reason. I don't understand why.
Resizing Pouch, I think, is the card that is the most in and out of lists that I've seen, at least.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting choice.
Yeah, Felkeine is playing one Guess the Weight, one Innovate, which is what's breaking up the 15 2-ofs kind of thing. But yeah, each of those one copies have then become 2 resizing pouches,
right,
which is a very interesting build of the deck.
Yeah, though, Frenetic is getting off to a decent start. He's not had the complete whiffs you can get with this deck sometimes, so the open is not bad at all. He does get an extra secret with the generated minion there from first day. Ooh.
That's cute.
And you know what I mean? Look at this already. Already I'm starting to think, Frenetic might be in trouble here. He does have the Crab Rider, which is probably his saving grace right now.
Yeah, I think Crab Rider puts him in a very strong position here, but even then, it's only because Felkeine actually kind of whiffed on his resizing pouch. That is a play that you have to look out for if you're playing it in your deck, is discovering a 0 with recycling pouch, because then obviously you have access to Innovate and Lightning Bloom, which if he'd have discovered there and suddenly could get Adorable Infestation out as well, then Felkeine was in business. But having, quote, only hit the pounce in that spot, a little bit unfortunate.
And this is kind of what I meant, right? Even here, the Crab Rider made Frenetic not lose, but he's definitely not winning right now either, so...
You like playing the 1 cub there as opposed to Bloom Soul of the Forest on 3 minions?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I guess, if you draw like that, who cares? But I think if you're... if the trades happen... What?
Sorry, the pain on Felkeine's face as his Lightning Bloom did not get Oma-yogged, and he is actually now overloaded for the next turn.
Going into what could have been a very strong 4-mana options, he's actually overloaded. He'll just draw an Innovate, it'll be fine. But yeah, I think the way they die is if they get traded into, and maybe Felkeine was okay with that. Is the way I would view it, but I do agree that maybe he could have gone about it a different way and get that Soul of the Forest down. What's Frenetic going to look for here? Is it still going to be 5/5 rush with something? Preferably
I
copy,
imagine it's
I
5.
imagine.
You'll be hard pressed to find a bigger fan of 1-mana golems than me, but with a hand this currently low value, I think he just has to go for the 5 just to look for the curve play. Certainly Oasis Surger, just 2 rushing 5/5s is about the best you can get in this sort of matchup.
Even if it was rush draw 2, that's still a very, very reasonable card in this situation for Frenetic.
Yep, that's the face of someone who's playing Token Druid, alright.
You either win or you lose.
Oh no, I drew all these really bad cards I put in my deck on purpose. Oh no.
Where's the feast going? Okay. That's something.
Job's done.
This is my danger, right? Maybe this is my inexperience with the deck, because, you may have guessed I don't really subject myself to playing Token Druid too often, but I'm always worried about Soul of the Forest getting stuck in my hand, right? Particularly in these sorts of matchups where it's not like if you get a full board of Glowflies against Paladin, it's not like they have the tools in their deck to clear that, right? So it's not like you have to protect that board with Soul of the Forest, because they just can't really deal with it anyway if you flood the board. So I think just using Soul of the Forest when it's reasonable, it would have been a 4-mana 6/6 in the situation I was suggesting it's just something that I tend to look out for in the more aggressively based matchups.
I think this turn, is potentially very difficult. Because straight away I look at Marcel Cub Arbor Up, right? Which looks very good. But there are two 5/5 Divine Shields, so you basically lose 2 of your minions instantly. But then the next question is, well, you've got 5 minions, so do you care if they get 2 free trades? Like, are you just pushing enough damage anyway? And that's why I definitely went from Arbor Up to Soul the Forest back to Arbor Up again after I told myself in my head through that conversation. But it is worth thinking about because I don't think it was straightforward.
Yeah, and also, like, the one remaining secret Felkeine knows is Avenge at this point, I believe, because he didn't get Oh My Yogg procced, and then he did proc Galloping Savior and dealt with it. So, like, you know, even trading the 1/1 into the Divine Shield and killing 1 5/5, for example, like, doesn't really achieve anything, right? Because he just ends up proccing Avenge. Okay, right back at you with the Gibberlings, buddy.
A Reckoning might just help a little bit if he can survive. It's a really sick secret, honestly. Like, the fact it works on any form of, like, any minion that deals 3 to anything is pretty powerful. Because even a trade, right, it actually will go off.
Right.
Frenetic's like, how do you like it, Token Druid? I've got the gibbering now. This board is Felkeine has to just make the decision right now, doesn't he?
I like this. So there's 17 on the other side of the board, which, you know, Paladin adding 7 to this is not a very big deal. Sorry, it's a very hard thing for them to do, the deck that they're playing, right? 7 damage for 7 mana is not really something that's that possible with their deck. So I think just going straight up for the race, and by the way he sequenced it, he's guaranteeing almost that he's going to have minions survive on the board next turn, right? Where he can then cash out the Pride's Fury buff for maximum potential.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Does he not want to hand over Doll first? He has convictions left, right?
Yeah, absolutely he does.
If he hand over Doll's conviction, doesn't he just win?
It'll add 6. Yeah, no, he would. Absolutely, yeah.
He'll add 8, right?
With the Hand of Adal as well.
Yes, yes, sorry.
In itself will add 6. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Oh! Okay, Frenetic's got something. Oh, he wants the weapon down for the taunt, but yeah, I guess if he Hand of Adals and misses, then he's in trouble, but I think I would have just gone for it. And then
I like this play, honestly,
yeah.
right? Like, the game plan is so linear now. It's, you know, another one of the things that really bothers me about the deck. It's not okay.
I was going to say, hold the phone.
Yes. But because, you know, a lot of the things like Swipe have been taken out of the game. Wait. Rush? Yeah, that's lethal, right?
It's lethal.
You can hero power. That's 5 damage plus the hero power through the taunt. The thing goes phase. That's insane. You always play 2 resizing powers.
I was going to say, you know what, Sol?
100% of the time.
Who are we to question?
Yeah.
Resizing pouch. How dare we? When it's basically the card that got the victory there for Felkeine. There was, and I guess that is one of the arguments for it, is that, as you mentioned, the deck is very linear. You always know what Druid or this version of Druid is capable of, and Frenetic knew he plays a taunt with like 1 card or so. It's very unlikely that he can actually punch through the taunt and deal 4 damage. But as we saw that, you know, there was a way, and it was resizing pouch plus X. I was just going to be very interested. I'm sure people will tell me whether he, like, what were the better mana options to achieve that? Like, was just playing it first and getting the 7 cost the best? Or should, you know, maybe there's a hero power resizing pouch option? Because he made that turn very quickly, and I think I would have tried to think about what cards are available at what costs. So yeah, maybe Felkeine just knows.
Yeah, I think the game massively rewards that kind of knowledge right now. You know, I know little bits and pieces of probabilities at different mana costs, you know, based on things that Deck of Lunacy throws up, things that Jandis throws up, all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people do really fail to learn the probabilities, and it's something that you can just kind of sit and do in an afternoon. And it's probably, like, learning that stuff from scratch is probably more productive for you as a Hearthstone player than just jamming ladder for a whole extra afternoon.
Right.
You know, like there are diminishing returns on just jamming more games, whereas learning some probability and stats based on the pools and different minions can like dramatically increase your win rate. There was a spot last week where Jarla, arguably the best player in the world, I think made a really big mistake just because he clearly didn't know how similar the pool of 7 mana removal spells were.
Right.
Something that could have just directly impacted his ability to win the game.
And also as well, you know, going all the way back to 2014, like Firebat was someone who made a ton of like spreadsheets on everything and still does to this day. But what I mean is, if you made like a spreadsheet with this information on now, you could just add to it. Right, like once you built the initial, you add just the extra numbers that are relevant, the new options, so on, and then it's more knowledge for you as a player. And you know that if that ups your win rate by a couple of %, well, you know what, you'll take it over time. So yeah, really good win there for Felkeine. Got away with it there with the resizing pouch, and that means Sottle, he's only 1 game away from a very quick 3-0 victory, and he has OTK Demon Hunter to do it with, a deck that again feels like always has just mixed results, at least on stream for Grandmasters.
For sure, yeah. Before we move on, I do want to do my due diligence and just hold the L here and say, well, if you're going to, like, for the small price of me calling you a sociopath, if you want to build your deck like that and then resizing pouch wins you the game, sure, you take that every single time. Clearly a good decision. But yeah, OTK Demon Hunter is a deck that, like, if you play against it once on ladder and they just deal like 72 to you on turn 8, which is possible, you're just going to not believe that this deck exists, right? But like the problem is that it just does not do that with any amount of consistency. We already saw one ridiculous game of OTK Demon Hunter come up today from the APAC region, which I will be surprised if we get anywhere near in terms of high drama. But I'm sure Felkeine is going to give it a good go. It's certainly a very, very difficult deck to play. It's one of those decks that there's always one deck in the meta where there'll be like 2 to 3 players will just say it has 0 losing matchups. It beats every deck in the game as long as you play it perfectly. OTK Demon Hunter is that deck for this metagame. There's still those few players that like, yeah, it's just super hard. The only reason you lose is because you're throwing. Like, you should never lose a game of Hearthstone with this deck. It's unbeatable. But no one can actually demonstrate that to be true. Right? It still just holds down a fairly 50% win rate in a lot of spots. And certainly does have the potential to beat anything.
Yeah, and one of the cards, or one of the things I probably enjoy more than playing / watching it, is the different choice of deck building we've had this week. These like 2 Sigils of Flame, one you can see in Felkeine's opening hand here, I think are actually like very good, because it just makes your opponent have to really decide if they want to just commit a minion into an AoE. Like, are they, well, 1, can they do that? Does it just insta-die? Or 2, if it lives, like, it's going to be on like 1 health probably, right? And it's like, well, do you want a 1 health minion against Demon Hunter hero power? Probably not. So then do you just pass your whole turn and just have what you've got on board already? It really does sort of stifle a lot of aggro openings. And the fact that Felkeine has kept it shows at least his respect for the card.
Yeah, he kept it and threw Immolation Aura, which shows you how much faith and flexibility he has in that. But I will tell you what you do in response to that sigil coming down, Raven. You play the one of Nerubian Egg in your deck. Deck building genius from Frenetic about to come out.
Yeah, honestly, because I played a good chunk of this the day before yesterday, actually, after submission. I was surprised that I actually liked the Nerubian Egg, because it's another target you can happily use Conviction on super early. Because it's like a 3 attack minion and then a 4 attack minion if someone kills it. Like, that's just what you kind of want in the deck, right? Something sticky that you can just gain damage from. So although it looks weird as like just 1 random Nerubian Egg, I actually really did like it a lot. Really good target for the secrets too.
Yeah, we see other players going very heavy on Divine Shields with like Argent Squires and Righteous Protectors and so on. And, playing Death Rattle minions is kind of, similar to philosophy in reverse, right? Instead of making my minions difficult to remove, I'll just make them leave something behind when they die. And you can't just leave a Nerubian Egg hanging around on the board because you know it's a conviction target. You know it's an avenge target. And you know that it will just gain some attack and start hitting you very soon.
Yeah, and even like trade, and now it's a 4/4 after a trade. Wait, what? So it's really, really good, especially as you mentioned for those avenge targets. But already Felkeine just chucking down the Sigil of Flame and throwing this, showing this 3/3 some respect. But now the ultimate payoff,
Insta has the option to go Possess Villager or Avenge here to both develop something a little bit extra. But I was kind of interested in Felkeine's turn as well, because obviously he's trying to unlock from the left now because he got Skull early, so he's trying to play that left-hand side of his hand out as best he can. But he did double jump straight into Spectral Sight there and then turn down the Outcast on the Spectral Sight to be able to keep playing from the left-hand side of his hand instead.
It did also just allow him to at least kind of answer this board and slow it down. Obviously, it did not pay off because of the egg, but still, you know, if there wasn't exactly egg there, then this board looks like he can just pass this turn and do what he wants and chuck more cards. So I do actually like the idea, but you are right. It is an odd sight, isn't it, to draw a Spectral Sight and then just not play it when you can.
Frenetic living up to his name here with the pace of play. Suddenly, as we progress through these Paladin games, I think he was playing a much more considered pace in the opening game, so it's been very, very rapid in his decision-making so far.
Yeah. Similar to me, when I queue against Demon Hunter on ladder, I just want to get it over with. This eye beam with the spell damage, skull up next, like, it's looking very, very good for Felkeine right now.
It is, but that is a philosophy and 2 eye beams already used, which are all potential combo pieces that you can use to end the game, because, you know, many combo decks or control decks don't ever need to execute their win condition to beat aggro decks, right? They just need to survive for long enough before they can take over the game. Absolutely not the case with OTK Demon Hunter, that you always need to execute your win condition. It's just your win condition has so much redundancy that you can generally get it done regardless. But those are 3 pretty key pieces that he's used already.
Yeah, I'm honestly sat here thinking, does Frenetic swing and just re-equip Hammer of the Naru for the 6/6 here? Because it wouldn't be the most hated play I've ever seen.
Oh, I've done that so many times. Yeah. Like, just chewing up 1 charge to get an extra 6/6 on the board nice and early. It's fine. But I think in this spot, he has the ability to generate a very comparable amount of power on the other play anyway.
Yeah, and I think as well, with drawing Kazakus, and you can go for the AoE buff soon, because if you get to stick that board, then that's just a 1 extra selling point on top there. Well, I think this is the point where Felkeine has to make a decision. How much
Skull from the right again here, maybe?
Well, this is another weird thing about his build, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an OTK Demon Hunter specialist, but from what I've seen, most of the ones don't run the double spell damage effect, whereas Felkeine could throw away this Og Merchant and still have the Talented in hand. I think I like the Skull suggestion here.
I grow impatient.
Chewing on the left to give himself the out of Immolation Aura off the Skull. That would then kill the McGurgle and the card whose name I've forgotten. Gosper, right? Crossroads Gosper. Discounted Il'gynoth. That's good for the future, but he needs answers now. None of these are it.
So we're going to go for the studies.
Spectral. Only 1 mana left. Not really anything he can do with this 1 remaining mana at this point.
He just has to hope he survives.
Isn't he just...
He needs
no, there's
3,
20
right?
showing?
Yeah, he needs 3, which is doable with Kazakus.
Kazakus for 1, yeah.
Yeah, +1/+1.
I'm looking for a few good mercenaries.
Make a little bit faster, Frenetic.
Give your minions +1/+1.
Yeah, look good to me. Frenetic spots it straight away, of course. There's the +1/+1. And that's going to be game. Frenetic is not going to get swept here, and he does bag this win with the Paladin. And, you know, it looked pretty good there, I will say. I think, like, Felkeine... I'm not saying Felkeine did anything wrong, but you are right in that he had to use a lot of resource in healing, and then the turn that he had to, like, go for all the card draw to get the combo ready was the turn that Frenetic, was actually putting on the most pressure, right? It was kind of just a terrible timing.
And it became kind of exponential problems as well because he dumped 2 I-beams early. He then used 1 Felscreen Blast to set up that turn, then played the Skull, and then he could have played the second Felscreen Blast, which would have kept him alive, theoretically, in that position. But at that point, he's then completely out of lifesteal activators for his own combo because he's already used 2 I-beams, unless he's able to then discover an additional I-beam. And even then, killing your opponent with 1 I-beam is quite difficult, even for the amount of damage that OTK Demon Hunter can put together. So there's a couple of spots in there that I'd like to talk about, but I think, you know, certainly it's a very, very difficult deck. And remember, the card that he was really fishing super hard for at the end, Immolation Aura, he still had 2 copies remaining in his like single-digit deck at that point, and he threw it away from the opening hand as well. So, you know, lots of things to look back on there. You know, going back to Spectral Sight sequencing, whether the Sigil of Flame was played on the right turn, but also just, you know, shout out to the inclusion of Nerubian Egg from
yeah, exactly,
being able to cash out so much additional damage against that Sigil turn that really very few other decks or tech cards in the game would have allowed him to do.
And ended up eating one of those I-beams, right? Like, that's what one of the I-beams was for with the Thalnos. So again, as you said, it all helped Frenetic put Felkeine in that awkward spot. But of course, Felkeine is still winning the series 2-1 so far, and Frenetic is going to be getting ready to lock in his next deck, which I believe is going to be his Demon Hunter. But I'm just going to triple check to make sure I'm not crazy. Oh, okay, it is a mirror match with both players running OTK. Oh, because there is a mixture, right? There's some, I guess, mid-range Demon Hunters, the name has been thrown around. The more sort of minion-based aggressive ones with Inquisitors in there as well. So it's not necessarily correct, I guess, to assume everyone is just playing OTK.
Let me help you out, Raven, as the self-elected president of the Hearthstone Deck Naming Committee. It is Soul Demon Hunter, it's OTK Demon Hunter, and it's Green Rack. Those are the 3 decks.
Oh, Green Rag, okay.
Green Rag, yeah.
I thought it said something else then. Anyway, moving on to Frenetic's list. He's only running the 1 Sigil of Flame, and I can't quite off the top of my head see what... Oh, is he running an Ooze instead?
He's playing an Ooze, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So he's running an Ooze instead. Maybe has some impact in the mirror, but normally it's going to be just completely going for that OTK, right?
Yeah, you would imagine so. I believe he's also running 2 Spectral Sight in place of the 1 Acrobatics that Felkeine is running, which, you know, does potentially give Felkeine a little bit of extra ability to turbo through super hard, but Acrobatics is not a card I'm a huge fan of in OTK Demon Hunter, just because there's so many cards that are earmarked for specific purposes. Like, how often do you actually draw 2 cards and go, oh wow, those 2 cards are specifically really good this turn right now, right? Like, it's just not that kind of deck. You draw cards, you're like, okay, well, that's a combo piece. There's some healing that I might use like 3 turns from now, right? Like, that's just kind of the style of card that you have in your deck. So for me, Acrobatics not a card I'm a huge fan of.
Well, let's dive into it. Pretty lackluster opening hand from Felkeine there, especially because this Spectral Sight is going to just insta get put in an awkward spot, right? The Ethereal Org Merchant is going to have to be chucked away at some point, unless there's going to be a skull off the top, which I guess Illidari Studies can maybe get him, but still nothing too crazy right now for Felkeine.
Yeah, both players kind of unfortunately have some weird cards locking up the left-hand side of their hand right now, right? Like, Frenetic is not going to want to dump the Talented Arcanist anytime soon, right? So that's kind of preventing him from outcasting things from the left-hand side. Whereas Felkeine, kind of similar spot with the Ethereal Org Merchant. Obviously not as big a punish to get that card out of his hand, but still not ideal.
I was already watching then whether he's just going to tempo it out. Like, just play a 2-1 and go. Wow. What a terrible turn. Got dumped the Immolation Aura. Yeah. It's not even one of those things where, like, oh, that's a waste, you could have just hero powered and dumped it later. Mana control is actually very important in Demon Hunter, because you need to spend the mana emptying your hand when you can in these weird situations.
Yeah, this is a race, and it's not a race in terms of like face hunter versus face hunter, where it's a race of just dealing as much damage as you can every turn. It's a race to get through your deck and execute your combo. And so even minor actions like that, which is getting a card out of your hand first and foremost, so you free up space in your hand to draw more cards, which you will probably see being a factor in this matchup at some point, but also just throwing away cards from the left-hand side of your hand to be able to unlock Outcast later on in the game. All of those things achieve something. If you don't spend your mana on doing that, you fall behind in the race. You have to spend all of your mana every single turn on achieving your end goal of drawing through your deck. Once again, Frenetic in a very similar spot.
Yeah, at least, like, you can argue Sigil is very dumpable, right? Like, it's not really going to do much, so at least it's just a card that can be thrown away. Unfortunately, of course, that Il'gynoth on 4 mana is a little bit frustrating, try to get it this early.
Yeah, and now having...
Off to the races.
And now having got to... Felkeine rubs his hands together, having hit the Il'gynoth off the Skull of Gul'dan, which is, of course, the dream in this scenario. We've seen Felkeine for the last couple of turns holding on to that Skull discount, just so he was able to do it nice and early there. And that leads on to the point I was going to make about Frenetic's hand, is that now he's hit 5 mana, he actually doesn't have to dump from the left anymore, right? Because any Outcast card he draws, up to and including Skull, he can just play straight from the right-hand side now. So he's now feeling more comfortable just holding this Talented Arcanist on the left-hand side of his hand instead.
Yeah, you can see how weird this matchup is when Frenetic just almost insta-passed last turn on 5 mana, did nothing, didn't swing, didn't do anything, because again, swinging doesn't achieve anything with the weapon unless you're killing a minion that feels like a must kill. If, like, for some reason the other players left a Moarg on board, you would try and kill it, I guess, but generally speaking, there's just no reason to. And Felkeine now has to just focus on, like, not messing up, I guess is his job, because it's he has everything he needs, or at least he has the beginnings of everything he needs. He just needs to not have any missteps, right, and get himself caught out.
He's basically just going to need to get this weapon down and then find himself a spell damage minion, and that'll be enough for lethal quite comfortably. Discovers the Skull, though. Frenetic is going to need to hit some juice here himself to find his way back in this. He needs these to be combo pieces so he can go off with his Il'gynoth in hand equally early. Those are not it, unfortunately. At best, he saves 1 mana on an I-Beam if he casts it from a non-outcasted position during his combo turn.
Yeah, that combo turn isn't looking too soon, though, is it? With Il'gynoth at 4 mana, the spell damage at 2 mana, and so on. So, is that just lethal?
Yep.
Oh, and that's just what happens. Felkeine got the Skull first, hit the right cards, and this is why. And although this has happened in a mirror match, you can see already why the deck doesn't just auto-win, right? Because you can have very tricky card draws that make it a little bit worse for you. But thumbs up there from Frenetic. He knows the game's over. Congratulations to Felkeine. He's going to take our first match of the day, and he will progress into tomorrow, as these are all elimination matches on stream.
Yeah, it looked very, very straightforward, and it likely was, but there were some minor details there that might have changed the outcome. If, for example, Frenetic's Skull that he just cast that turn was better, there were things Felkeine did that maybe sped him up a turn, like holding on to his Outcast discount all the way up until his Skull turn, for example. Obviously, he then got lucky with what he hit with the discounts, but in different worlds, in different games, that might have changed the outcome, where instead, you know, Frenetic hit a better outcome with his Skull, and then because Felkeine had played badly, he was 1 turn slower and he lost the game. So, you know, Felkeine, even though he did kind of have that one handed to him, he still executed everything very nicely, as you see him rubbing his
And that's the thing there. With this deck, I do think there's a more of a fear of messing it up.